Hey everybody, this is Cole with New Horizons RV. I want to take you on a mini tour of our chassis department today and answer some of the questions you guys have had for us recently. So if you follow me back here, our chassis department at our shop here in Kansas. We've got 3 employees that work back here, 2 that specialize in building the frame, 1 that specializes in welding up all of our aluminum walls. But today we're going to concentrate on our main chassis, the frame of our fifth wheels. And we've had some questions recently about the leveling systems that we use, the components that are the same or different on a Majestic versus a Summit, and also kind of the process that we use to coat or paint, to seal up the frame. So I'll hit some of those highlights and a few other features that we employ building our chassis at New Horizons. I've already mentioned it, but if it isn't self-evident, we build our own chassis. We don't buy from a third-party, vendor to, hey, we want a 40-foot chassis, build it for us. No, we design it and cut the steel, weld the steel, put it all together right here in-house, which really separates us from the competition because we are going to build this chassis the right way. They are big, they're heavy, but that is what allows a New Horizons to last you 15, 20, 25 years of use, even as a full-timer where this is your home. It's all American steel, so we're not getting anything imported in from China or any other steel making countries out there. That's the only one I've heard of is bad, is don't use that steel. So anyway, the leveling systems. We're standing next to a Majestic chassis. This is a Quadra Bigfoot leg right here. This system has 4 points, just like the motorhomes do, and each leg has a 17,000 pound lift capacity, and each leg has its own pump and reservoir, which are protected behind this cover right now. It's got a little brain at the front that senses where level is, and you can also manually run it, front, back, side, side, and that will level your coach up automatically after you unhook from your truck. Just hit auto, enter, walk away, start hooking up your water, start hooking up your shore power, and it'll take care of leveling up for you. So you don't have to bring a huge, lumber yard in the basement storage area to level side to side or front to back. We also use this system to change tires. So, years down the road when you've got your tire's going bad because of UV exposure, or you've traveled a lot and your tread's going bad, you can lift the coach off the ground with this, change those tires out, and put the new ones back on. The Summit system employs Summit series employs a LCI, Lippert Components 4-point leveling system, and it's also automatic, and it also can lift the coach off the ground. The big difference is the Bigfoot has a 17,000 pound per leg capacity. The LCI is 14. So it's not quite as heavy duty, but it is more than up to the task of leveling and taking care of those leveling needs on a coach. So the Bigfoot we have used longer. I know it's been an available option since '04. I believe we made that standard on all units we've built since, I want to say, around 2010. So we quit giving people the availability of something else. So the suspension, I want to talk about that since we're in this area. Suspension on a Majestic. This is kind of nice that the wheel and tire's not on this unit, but the MORryde IS suspension is standard on a Majestic. It's an available upgrade on a Summit. We use the Dexter leaf spring with shock absorber. It's a more traditional suspension setup. We use that standard on our Summit series. Disc brakes are installed on pretty much every build. We still have available drums as standard. Some of our customers actually buy these, set them on a lot, and never move them. But for anybody traveling, the disc brakes are a very inexpensive upgrade and tremendous stopping power. These are a Kodiak disc brake, and the size of these axles will range from 7,000 pound to 8,000 to 9,000 pounds, depending on the size of trailer, the equipment that you're installing, and 3 axle versus 2, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got some engineering parameters of how to size these, and bigger is not always better. You can put too heavy duty of an axle on a light coach and then take away, that ride cushioning. So we definitely want to dial it in to get you that in that 3,000 to 5,000 pound cargo carrying capacity range is what we shoot for. So the MORryde IS suspension, extremely smooth riding. It uses rubber torsion blocks instead of leaf springs, but there is some maintenance, and there is, I'm going to say, a life expectancy on these. Last I read, and it's been a while, I should probably read back through the MORryde manual, but I remember reading that these rubber torsion blocks need replaced after 10 years or 100,000 miles of travel. So there is some added maintenance with this system. Courtney, what else were we talking about needing to go through?
I believe you're talking about the beams.
Oh, thank you. Got my assistant to keep me on track here. So Majestic and Summit, both chassis share our 12-inch wide flange beam. This is the main part of our chassis. And then a Majestic, we do a 2x6-inch box tube, which you can see right here. On my Summit series, we do a 2x4, and then add a 2-inch spacer, which allows our correct ride height with these axle setups. So the 2x4 or 2x6 is also sized on the gauge of steel, or the thickness, from 3/16 to a quarter to even 3/8 inch thick, again depending on the length and size of the RV and what it needs to carry. So the 12-inch beam is always a 3/16 gauge. The question I get posed a lot of times is, well, do you cut through your frame to put slide rams? Yes, we do. However, we take the extra time to come back in and weld in gusset plates to bring the strength back into the sidewall webbing when you cut through the frame for a slide ram. So it is not something that we worry about in the long term to cut through that. Now, if we were just cutting through and leaving it as is, I'd have a different answer for you on that. All of our slides are hydraulically driven. The slide rams haven't been installed on this unit yet, but the ram will be right here, and then as those hydraulics push this room out, this big kind of square tube has a rack and pinion system on the bottom of it, and then a connecting rod that makes these arms. There's 2 arms and sometimes 3 on the bigger, heavier slides that run in and out at the same rate. And that we've used hydraulic slides for a number of years with really good success. Even our bedroom slides are hydraulically driven. The only exception to that is on a Summit model where you have a bedroom vanity slide at the foot of the bed. Those are what's called a Schwintek mechanism. We've done 2 of them in the last 4 years. So hydraulics are pretty much on every build. So you actually see the rams sitting down here. The welding shop will be installing them probably tomorrow. By the end of the day tomorrow, this rig will be ready to go and get its paint job in our paint booth. So the front end of the fifth wheel, some of the features of this design, which we didn't come up with this, company that's been out of business for a little while called Teton Homes, invented this in the early 2000s. They called it their big and tall storage. And the benefit of the main chassis running from the front to this area and then dropping down is it allows you to throw a lot more steel at the area that's going to typically be the weakest part of the frame, where the most flex will happen. So you can see we've got a big gusset at an angle here. On the back side here, Courtney, if you swing around here, where these pieces come down and meet up with the main chassis, we've got a gusset plate welded in here. We've got extra steel in the area that's going to be the weakest point on a frame. A traditional fifth wheel frame will usually have what's called a drop Z design, where the chassis will run to here, then another part of steel will drop down, run forward, and then angle up. Some of our competition, when you look at the side profile of their fifth wheel, you'll even see that main chassis sticking down below the skirting. A question I get posed a lot of times is, your rigs look closer to the ground or lower to the ground. One of the reasons for that is we bring our skirting down to wrap around all these frame rail pieces so you don't see them. It's an aesthetic choice. But if you were to measure where the hit points are, which are going to be landing legs, the frame itself, I mean, we're within inches of everybody else that's building these things. We just choose to bring our skirting lower so we think it looks prettier. So, but if you notice here, the height of this basement storage area, a lot of cubic footage of storage. This rig that we're looking at is about a 43-foot unit. So this upper deck is very good size. We'll have the LP canisters, battery storage tray. One thing you won't see up front is a generator box. One of the reasons for that, if you follow me back here, we do something very unique at New Horizons RV. Courtney, I'm gonna have you stand here. It might get a little bit dirty. Sorry, Janie. Our generator mount. We actually weld it to the frame and place it behind the axles between the frame rail. So we'll have LP fire generator bolted to this frame. Then the exhaust is gonna run out the back end, and you know, it helps with your pin weight not be as high. It helps with not taking up all that storage up front where a traditional generator would go. And we can install LP, that's what we do most of the time, gasoline fired or diesel fired generators. The typical size on those is 6.5 kilowatts, or on the diesel we do an 8, and I think the gasoline is 7.5 kW. So, and then the fresh water tank. This is another important aspect of the chassis. We locate the fresh water tank right over the rear axle. On a Majestic, it's a 100-gallon tank. If you have that full up, that's 830 pounds, I believe. I think it's 8.3 pounds per gallon. So that's a lot of weight. If that was forward of the axles, that's going to increase your pin weight pretty substantially when you're traveling down the road. So we've done this setup for about 5 or 6 years now, and it's been very well received amongst our customers. It takes a little more effort to get to it for service, but the benefits of the lower pin weights and not losing the storage up front versus once a year getting to that oil filter, they've definitely outweighed having to crawl under here to get to it for service work. So I'm gonna sneak back out. Actually, Courtney, if you come over here, this is a really nice feature that sometimes I forget to point out on my tour. So apparently it pays to crawl into the chassis when you're doing this. But right here, this steel tube is actually connected to the slide arm. This steel tube is going to run in and out with the slide room. And the reason we have this is all of our electrical components, our cords, 12 volt, 110, etc. They're actually going to run inside this steel tube, and then the slack will basically run tight and then come loose, run tight, come loose with the slide room in and out. If for some reason you were to ever experience a blowout, all your wiring is fully protected. You won't have a severed line because a tire failed and caused you big issues. At worst, you'd have a midship marker light, which is an easy 12 volt wire to fix. That would be the worst thing that would happen for the wiring. So spare tire carrier, nothing too special here. It's just a good old manual spare tire, cranked down. Our spares match your aluminum wheels, so if you do have the spare on, you're not gonna stick out like a sore thumb. It'll be the matched unit for everything else. I am gonna squeeze under here, try not to hit my back. Oh, I made it. Right behind me, this is the jig that the chassis starts out upside down on. We're gonna get the main frame, the box tube, all that welded together, the axles placed, and we have a crane system that's gonna flip it over, and then my weld shop guys are gonna put together the outriggers that hold the floor, start welding on the holders for the Bigfoot systems, the leveling, and then brake lines, etc. So this rig has another day in the chassis shop, and then it's going to go down to our paint booth where we use a specialized chassis paint, and I will show you what that looks like when it's done. Right outside the door here. So this frame has been on the line now for a couple days, and we're starting to get the guts of it installed, which we'll talk about next month. But it's a specialized chassis paint that uses on like car frames and things like that. So, and that's coating everything. Got an integrated bumper, and then skid rollers are standard on the Majestic. Those are strong enough to hold the entire weight of the trailer. On my Summit series, I use a skid plate, which will also hold the weight. It doesn't roll, so it screeches extremely loud. Think of the chalkboard times 10. But here you can see in action, generator's been mounted. You know, we've got the exhaust going out the side because this is a toy hauler, and if you're running that and you got the patio deck going down on the back, you don't want that exhaust just coming right out underneath you. And then this also has a 100-pound LP tank in addition to our standard 240 tanks, or 240-pound tanks, excuse me. So this particular coach has a total of 180 pounds of propane on board. This you have to fill up at a propane shop, or if you're at a resort that has the service that'll come by, you know, with the big whip, you can just through a door, plug right in, top it off. What else do we have on that list for questions?
I think we've pretty much covered it.
We've covered a lot of goodies. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's some things I forgot that you guys are interested in learning more about. As always, if you're in Kansas, look us up. We'd love to have you through so we can show you the whole shop. But if you do have questions on anything I might not have covered, please send us a message. We'll do our best to get back to you. You know, the best way to get your questions answered is just give us a call. 800-235-3140, excuse me, which our phone number's on our Facebook and our website. But get on the phone with myself or Drew, my older brother, who's also in sales. He's not with us on this video. I guess I drew the short straw, but give us a call. We'll be able to answer your questions a lot quicker than just through, you know, back and forth messages on email and things like that. So once again, we'd love to invite you through to take a tour, show you what we do at New Horizons, and show you how we can build your dream RV. So thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time.